Nobody signed up.
For the ordinance?
Discussion aspect. The never-ending sidewalk. Who had it? The sidewalk discussion?
I'm not aware of what you're talking about.
Oh, everybody kept coming up. There was only one person signed up to speak, and we had 12 public
Hold on,
speakers
turn
that
it.
night.
Conduct second reading. We held the public, did we hold the public hearing?
Oh, that one.
No, it's not. The public hearing was held at, here, we don't have a public hearing tonight.
The ordinance is a public hearing. You open the public hearing on the second reading of the ordinance.
Oh, so 7 is public by default? I guess you are.
Be safe. Imagine too many
It's been
people are gonna
noticed in the
line up.
paper, and
I
that's
thought that was for the charter commission.
it's for the ordinance adopted.
No, it's for the ordinance. But I thought the public hearing was at the,
It's this
Because we
too.
didn't have a public hearing when we had the first reading.
So it's not under
Then this
6, but
should
it's
have
under
been
7 when we address 7A.
Right,
Open it up for public hearing.
public hearing.
I don't. Not even a little.
Okay, for the record, that clock is still slow.
I don't know who you want to
Someday
talk
I'm gonna
to.
leave the dais, I'm gonna go be part of the public hearing.
I'm going to call the meeting to order here. The clerk will note those in attendance.
The exception of Councilmember Angstran, who is excused.
Thank you. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty and
justice for all.
All right, moving on to item 2, approval of the minutes. I have one correction for the record. On page 7, the roll call vote for the rush line vote, it notes that Councilmember Hughes voted nay and Councilmember Edberg voted aye. Those were reversed, so we'll get those corrected. Other than that, does anyone have any corrections to the minutes?
Get your opposition research, but I've got that wrong.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to item 3, adoption of the agenda. I think there are a couple items we want to move from the consent agenda to new business. Item 4C and item 4F at the request of various council members. So we'll move those under new business. Does anyone else have any corrections or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none? I'd
Move approval as amended.
Second.
All those in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. All right, moving on to the consent agenda as amended.
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Item 5, visitors and presentations. We have nothing scheduled. Item 6, public hearings, nothing scheduled. So that gets us to item 7A, second reading of an ordinance adopting a redistricting plan for the city of White Bear Lake. Kara, Ms. Costry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are holding second reading of a redistricting ordinance, something that is done every 10 years after new census populations are ascertained. The purpose of redistricting is to balance ward populations as nearly as possible in a compact and contiguous manner. The city charter sets forth that the city's charter commission serves as the redistricting commission. As such, the redistricting commission identified 2 small changes to better balance ward populations and filed their tentative redistricting plan with the city clerk, me, on February 22nd. The redistricting commission held its public hearing on the tentative plan on Monday, March 7th, which was noticed in the official newspaper. The city council followed up by holding first reading of the redistricting ordinance on March 8th, and will be holding a public hearing this evening, which was also noticed in the White Bear Press. Changes in state legislative districts allow for 1 precinct in Ward 3, where 2 existed before. Purple shading represents a shift of 117 residents at Boatworks Commons apartment complex from Ward 2 to Ward 1. And the mustard shading represents a 2-block shift of 93 residents from Ward 5 to Ward 4. That 2-block area is between Spruce Place and Dorothy Avenue and between McKnight Road and Howard Avenue. Ramsey County will be sending polling place notifications to these residents that were affected by these ward changes. The redistricting ordinance before council this evening consists of a written description of these changes along with a new boundary map. In addition to the ordinance, we ask council to also consider adopting a summary resolution to facilitate final publication. And just as a matter of interest, we have a couple of slides of other statistics. This one showing voter age in the city. It's about 80% of the city's population is of voting age. And the next slide shows a percentage of BIPOC population in White Bear Lake, with 19% overall population comprised of people of color. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Costry. At this time, I will open it up for public hearing. Anyone can speak at this time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council.
I have a question.
Councilmember Hughes.
Ms. Costry, the right along Lake Avenue there, after he steals the people that live in the apartment building, if you go slightly north, there are a couple of businesses along Lake before you turn onto basically the Sather Trail. Does it stop before those businesses or after those businesses? Because there are a couple houses as well. It's hard to tell what the purple shading.
So with that, I would like to invite up a member of the Charter Commission, also serving as the Redistricting Commission, to answer that question. I wasn't aware that there's residents in that location. The census block, now there may be residents today, but the census data collected from 2020 indicates that the population was 117 at that complex in the Boatworks Commons.
So it's north of the complex. I don't know if there's anybody here.
Okay. Paul, could you show that map again? Yep. Thank you.
There's a couple of houses.
Right in the lakeshore area.
So
Like
we
yelling at
have
the mic.
census data by census block down here. So I can go look at that.
Does it cut off right at Lake then, at 96?
The ordinance lays out the
It
specific
lays out exactly the
streets.
street.
That's all I was going to say.
Stole some more people.
No, I mean, that's good. Actually, to get into Ward 1, I think.
I mean, it's only like 3 houses. I just
I think
would
it-
like
I think it
clarity
is.
of. West of Lake Avenue South.
The Highway 96
So
would include those houses. There's a couple of businesses, but there's a couple of houses there. Your neighbors, right?
Mr. Geck, maybe you
like three
can
houses.
enlighten us.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Mark Sather, whom I think you are fairly familiar with, actually carried the labor more on working through this process. And I thought I'd bring him up here, so he's the one who spent a lot of his time looking at these numbers.
if I may, this map contains census data by block. The only people that identified in the census were the folks living in the Boatworks Commons. These are showing 0 population.
It would be to the north. It'd be the one to the north, right here.
Yeah.
There's a couple of houses right there.
So that's what,
Because this is Lake coming along, and there's like 3 houses right there.
Right there. There should be a couple of people in that census. I mean, it's no big deal, but
so they didn't identify possibly would be the,
I know who a couple of them are.
where would they? Doesn't matter if you vote.
And he's in-
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay. Councilmember Jones.
the question is, are you talking about the lakeside houses on east of 61, correct? Is that what you're
Yep.
identifying? North of Veterans Park?
Yep.
Yeah, it's right between Veterans Park and then where the Mark Sather Trail starts, basically, right
I mean,
there.
it's just a few people. It shouldn't upset the apple cart at all, but we should just
Just
maybe
know.
just know and acknowledge it as we do it, that's all.
Do you have any idea whether or not those houses are still in Ward 2 or whether or not those houses now will be moved into Ward 1?
Ward 1 will include
everything, and actually, maybe it'd be easier to define Ward 2. Ward 2 will come down to the point in which Old White Bear Avenue or Lake Avenue is sometimes described as intersects with Highway 61. So everything from north of the VFW would be in Ward 2. Everything south of VFW that would be in Ward 1 would be part of Ward 1. So it just basically takes the Boatworks Commons. Those houses, most of them are businesses, but some, they could be converted in the future. They used to be houses that are north of the VFW would be in Ward 2.
Still in 2, okay.
Okay. Did that give you the clarification?
Yes, it
Councilmember?
did, thank you.
Yep.
Very good.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Jones.
City manager pointed out, the inset of the map really points it out, that it's like, okay, it's encompassing all of 61 going down. So if I lived on the west side of Lincoln, I'm not, it doesn't matter anymore, right? They're all in Ward. That total, the verbal, yeah, makes sense.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I could help.
Oh, I see. Now I see it. Now I see it.
This is void.
It's this white area here. Now I see it. Yep, okay.
Consideration, if you look at the detailed map that the city clerk presented,
Yeah.
it shows the census counts. If you take these houses here, they actually come out, the line goes right down the middle of Manitou Island. So at one point, we thought it would be clearer to bring this up to the intersection of Highway 61, but then we took the first several houses on Lake Avenue that are on the lakeside, as well as half of the Manitou Island, which wasn't the intention. But that has to do with the boundary that's set by the Census Bureau. So by cutting it off here, where Old White Bear Avenue intersects with Highway 61, we pick up just those houses, or those units that are part of Boatworks Commons.
Very good. Thank you for clearing that.
Thank you.
Clarifying, Mr. Sather. Anyone else on the council?
Would you like a motion, Mr. Mayor?
I would like a motion, yes.
I'll move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Second?
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Costry.
point of order, it's an ordinance.
So I'll move approval of the ordinance.
I'll second that.
And a second for approval of the ordinance. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ordinance passes. And now accompanying the ordinance, we have a summary resolution. I would entertain a motion for approval on that resolution.
I would move for that resolution.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The resolution passes. Moving on to item 8A, resolution reestablishing ward and precinct boundaries and designated polling places for elections. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Your Honor. So the City Council just recently adopted their 2022 polling places on November 9th of 21. We are required to do that again as part of the redistricting efforts. Generally, this is something that would be on the consent agenda. However, we wanted you to adopt the previous ordinance prior to this. So there's one change. While Ward 3 was once divided into two precincts, changes to the state legislature now allow for a combination of those two precincts into one. And so on the screen, we have outlined where the ward precincts will be going forward. So we are looking for you to adopt a resolution reestablishing the ward and precinct boundaries and designating the 2022 polling places for elections in White Bear Lake.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Council. Motion is second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, resolution passes. Moving on to what is now item 8B, previous item 4C. Mr. Copy.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, I'll go through just a little history of the Bruce Venter Trail and what it's part of, and then kind of, I'm going to start at the very macro level and kind of work our way down to kind of get a little bit of the history. Bruce Vento Trail is part of U.S. Bike Route 41. It is a kind of a, I'll call it national bike route that actually takes you from St. Paul up to the Canadian border, generally following Highway 61. It connects with U.S. Bike Route 45, which takes you from St. Paul to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's a kind of a national program to lay out these bike routes. The Bruce Vento Trail is one of those pieces. There's a number of other, the Sunrise Trail through like North Branch in Wyoming. We have the Munger Trail. If you look at the map that I have up on the screen here, the segments that are shown in green are actually designated. They're built trail systems. The segments that are shown in red generally follow an approved or at least a widened shoulder on a roadway. So still a safe general route. In many areas, the goal is to get those to, those reds to greens. In the case of the Bruce Vento Trail, that would take you, from St. Paul through Ramsey County anyways, in that green area. That's what affects us. Other areas, other communities have other plans as well. The next slide will be a little bit interesting for you. So currently, Bruce Vento Trail through White Bear Lake is not, so there's a segment that comes up to Berkeley Road. But actually it truncates, the U.S. bike route truncates at the Gateway Trail because north of 694 and Berkeley Road, where Bruce Vento currently ends, there's not a safe route for that route to go on. So you'll see kind of how it moves around. Ultimately, if Bruce Vento Trail is constructed, it would generally follow the rail line in Highway 61 north to County Road J. Now I'm going to kind of get down into our level. So on the map up on the screen, the segments of trail, and I'm going to get my colors right, the south segment that you see in red up on the screen, that is a constructed trail. So that is constructed on a vacated rail line. So that was a segment that Ramsey County was able to acquire. The rail line no longer used it. They were able to acquire it. The segment in orange and blue on that line are segments that were hopefully going to end up on that same vacated rail line. To date, that remains an active rail system. So the ability to actually put the trail where the tracks are is not feasible at this time because of the active rail line. The segment north of Berkeley Road, so basically orange and blue, are set up in two separate phases. So back in 2016, Ramsey County did a study that kind of looked at that entire segment from Berkeley Road up to County Road J. Generally speaking, the segment that is along Highway 61 and the rail line shown in orange was generally feasible to construct that immediately adjacent to the rail line. On the east side, on the south segment, it crosses and then follows generally between Hoffman Road, or along Hoffman Road. It is between Hoffman Road and the rail line up to Whitaker Street, and then it jumps and follows Lincoln Avenue up to Highway 96. So that's kind of the south segment. The second segment to the north, Ramsey County study showed that there was not enough room to construct that segment of Bruce Vento Trail to the north. There wasn't enough cooperation by the railroad. There just wasn't, there were more right-of-way constraints in that area. So in 2018, they did a second study that studied the blue area that's up on the map. And I'm gonna, let me actually flip maps here. Getting a little ahead of myself. So this is what we just talked about. So the orange segment, the segment that I show in blue there, that is, so Bruce Vento predated the purple line. So that's an area that was readjusted to kind of match purple line near Whitaker Street. Now, if purple line does not move forward, they would go back to the original plan, and there'd be a little bit of right-of-way constraints in that area, but it's still feasible to construct that segment. But just wanted to bring that up, that this was a plan well before, the final purple line plans. The next segment that I have up on the screen, that is an area, again, in that 2018 study, 18 and 19 study that the county did. That was an area that, again, they looked at how are we going to get that trail north to County Road J, not being able to follow the active rail line. So they looked at a number of different options, and what it boiled down to, where there was room where they had enough right-of-way to do it, was to follow Bald Eagle up to the lake, follow the lake up to the Bald Eagle Regional Park. So, and then further north, if you're interested, we can go over that at some point. But focusing on the area through White Bear Lake, that's a change that was made, not ideal. Potentially someday the rail line will no longer be active and it can be relocated at some point in the future, but that is the route as it stands today. The county is actively, so maybe I'm going to, as we go back, I'm going to go back to this map here. I'll give you a little bit of history of kind of the public engagement and how they got there. So again, in 2016, they did that original study. They did a series of public engagement, the county that is. So I'll circle back. This is a county project. It is not a city-led project. It's led by Ramsey County Parks and Recreation is the lead on this. So again, back in, I'm going to get my notes correct here. So again, in kind of May of 2016, they did their first set of public engagement. They did some revisions. They did some additional ones in late 2018. And then they went back and looked at that northern segment that's shown in blue there back in 2019, knowing that they can't follow that active railroad. So again, they did a bunch of engagement with those folks along the line. They worked with some businesses and homeowners along Berkeley Road, north of Berkeley Road. There's some homes to the east of the railroad line. They worked with them. And then in 2021, Ramsey County Parks actively started a third study that moved into refining that option along Bald Eagle and up to Bald Eagle Lake. We did the county did public engagement again in July 21 and October of 21. They did some pop-ups at Market Fest over during the summer of 2021 as well. So, they actively engaged the community to start looking at those lines, or how that alignment would work along Bald Eagle and up to Bald Eagle Regional Park. So. Circling back to what we have before us tonight is the segment from Berkeley Road to Highway 96, not north of Highway 96. So that again, I'll flip forward one slide. So that's a segment that you see in orange up on the screen right there. So it is from Berkeley Road, where the current terminus is, and it would take us up to Highway 96.
If I may add, tonight you're being asked to adopt a resolution allowing me to draft a letter of support for the county solicitation for funding. We have done this several times, most recently last April. So generally, the council has supported this in the past. It is also in our comprehensive plan.
Ms. Crawford. I just want to clarify one thing. So you mentioned that this started in 1994, I think you said. So this predates any discussion of the Purple Line, the original plans for this section. Is that correct?
Correct.
And whether a purple line goes through or not, it's that little blue section that you're saying would amend it, but the broader yellow stripe that we're seeing on the screen is what we're discussing tonight in terms of this letter for funding. That's what we're talking about. So whether purple line comes through or not, it may or may not look a little different in that blue section, but that's it.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. Copy. Council? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Who's the letter to? I mean, who's the funding source? I mean, we're trying to help Ramsey County get funding. It doesn't really say. I don't. Maybe I didn't read it. Maybe I missed it.
Yep. We have a draft letter in your packet, and it is addressed to the Director of Planning and Development for Ramsey County Parks and Recreation. It is a nearly identical letter as to what we've sent last year.
Yeah, but who are they? I mean, we don't need to convince them to fund a trail. I mean, is it Ramsey County funding? Are they looking for us to say, yes, please spend some of your own money on this? Or are they asking for state funding or something? I guess it's not clear to me. To say, yeah, use some of your money for trails on this project. So it's directed to Ramsey County, or is it like, is Ramsey County going to get funding from some other source and saying, hey, look, the communities along the trail are supporting our request? I guess that's not clear. Maybe.
I can answer.
Oh, okay.
So the funding source that Ramsey County is pursuing is regional solicitation through Met Council.
Met Council.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's yep. So like any other major transportation project that
Competitive grant or.
competitive monies that the city or the state gets through federal funding.
Mm-hmm. Then just what other question? I know we're not talking about anything north of 96, but assuming we go there later in the future, so when you go right north of 96, there is a bituminous trail already on the east side of Bald Eagle. It's right across from my house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we're looking at, basically that. But then that'll run all the way up to the railroad tracks in White Bear Lake. Is that kind of the plan? Or is it just the sidewalk? Or will it become that bituminous trail?
Councilmember Walsh, other members of the council, so along Lincoln, so where it goes north of, you're talking north of Whitaker up to Highway 96 along Lincoln.
I'm talking about from 96 north.
Oh,
I know that's not part of this resolution today.
No, I
I'm
get
just
you.
saying in the future.
So the segment would generally follow, so if you look at Bald Eagle Avenue, generally there's a trail sidewalk system that's on the east side.
Yep.
That would generally be upgraded to a wider multi-use trail. So it's really not.
So it'll be wider and
Yep.
it'll be paved instead of a sidewalk.
Correct.
Do we have any sense of timeline for what a would-be phase two? I mean, this is far from a thing that's going to happen. We're talking about a letter tonight to then support a funding request that may or may not come to fruition. Do we have any sense of the timeline for what phase two when that would happen?
Mayor, members of the council, as far as phase two goes, the study that Ramsey County kicked off was in February of 2021. They held some public engagement, like I said, in July and October of last year. They continue to work with their consultant. They continue to work with the city, the township, as far as the alignment. Fairly simple within the city of White Bear Lake if, council supports it along Bald Eagle Avenue. There's some more contention in the township side as far as converting the roadway along the lake to a one-way. So things like that they're working through more on the township side at this point in time. They'll continue to work on that over the next year or two, I would imagine, come up with kind of a resolution and ultimately do something similar for that area where they would ask council for support of the project and potentially support and likely support of funding as well.
Okay. So it sounds like that's off in the distance. It's still, and there's any number of variables that could affect what that really looks like. I mean, it's a phase, but originally it was supposed to stay along Highway 61. Any number of possible things could change that might alter that route. So it's far from fait accompli that it's going to go up Bald Eagle Avenue, if ever. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, pre-COVID, I was at both the meetings talking about the Vento Trail, the one coming up to County Road E, because it was done in 2 sections. And there was other meetings besides the ones, I just went to the ones I could go to. The second one was, and I don't want to get too much into it, because it's going to be fun north of 96. There's no doubt about that. But to say that that is the end result of that, maybe the railroad, I don't know. I'm still hopeful. Everybody at that meeting, everybody, including the county folks, neighbors, businesses, wanted to see it on, and we had 2 meetings. Please go back and ask the railroad one more time, if you guys remember that, and say, come back and please, and the railroad's just, nope. That's the place, the best place to put it. But anyways, as far as this section is concerned, it's connecting Berkeley to north. It gives the south side a connection. We're shaped like an hourglass. It's tough to get that connection going north-south. We don't have a lot of north-south. If this was a standalone trail before us, if I had to pay for it with city funds, I would support it. I mean, it just makes sense. It's going through part of our preserve. It's using the existing railroad tracks, the housing that's affected by it. It's pretty far away from that housing development. It's down in that, I don't want to call it gully, I'll call it, where the railroad track sits considerably lower, going through where it comes close to, might attract new residents to the southern area that enjoy trails. And I'll say it again, I'm not going to talk about plowing sidewalks, but this isn't going away, folks. You know, it killed me last meeting to not support that segment of sidewalk. This is the future, walking, biking, and, you know, that's how I feel about it.
Redbird. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would only add the additional comments that there has been, in addition to the public engagement of Ramsey County, there has been engagement that our city has supported and engaged in. When we redesigned Highway 61, which predates both Mr. Cowpy and Ms. Crawford, we attempted to try and put a bike lane, find ways of facilitating. There were numerous meetings with the biking community and others concerned about that issue at that time that were convened alongside. We've had a number of these conversations. I believe, I haven't read the comp plan in a while. My recollection is that this is in our comp plan. The public had full opportunities on numerous occasions to make comments. I don't recall ever receiving one. So there has been extensive opportunity for community engagement. And I'm going to support this portion up to Highway. This runs all the way through the city of White Bear Lake. It doesn't get into the township. It doesn't go elsewhere. Those may be conversations down the road another time, another place, but this makes complete sense to me.
I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Anybody?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The resolution passes. Moving on to item 8C, formerly 4F, resolution of support for a legislative solution for the lake level of White Bear Lake. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As identified in our 2022 legislative priorities is a solution for the lake level of White Bear Lake. I don't know if I need to go into the full detailed context of it from the last many years, but most recently the DNR was required to analyze the maximum authorized volumes of groundwater use permits within a 5-mile radius of the lake, evaluate the impact of that use on water levels of the lake, and then set a collective annual withdrawal limit for the lake. That analysis revealed a limit of 55 gallons per day per person based on 2020 census information. That would leave no water for schools, hospitals, medical offices, government buildings, commercial uses such as restaurants, gas stations, grocery stores, or any other stores, hotels, industrial, or agricultural uses. Therefore, that was filed with the judge. In February of this year, Senator Housley introduced a bill with bipartisan support of Senator Chamberlain and Uyghur as co-authors. The bill was heard at the Senate committee in February. And in its draft form, the legislation was shared with and generally supported by other affecting communities, including Lake Elmo, Hugo, Lionel Lakes, Oakdale, White Bear Township, Stillwater, Matamidi, Vadnais Heights, and North St. Paul. In your packet is a resolution of support which broadly encourages legislation to pass a bill to assist with this regional matter. And the cities that I'm aware of at this point are that have adopted this resolution as well are Lake Elmo, Vadnais Heights, Oakdale, and North St. Paul. So with that, I will stand for questions if you have any on the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. I will just add that Ms. Crawford and I had a chance to attend the Senate hearing, the initial hearing. We heard some really good testimony from some of our neighboring communities. Bottom line is we have a judge's order, and now the DNR interpreting that order and making a recommendation that leaves us with a water draw amount that just isn't workable. It's not enough water for our residents, it's not enough water for our businesses, and it's going to require a legislative solution for us to get some relief. So with that, I would welcome some discussion on that, but I would encourage the council to pass this resolution. Councilmember Jones.
I have more of a comment than anything else. Thank you for taking this off. I believe, Mr. Edward, thank you. Just because I got my first 5 years on the council combined with the 5 years previous, and I'd like to know the statistics of this. I think it would be good. Was our water usage in the city reduced 20%? Mm-hmm. And so when this lake level lawsuit came up, it's like, okay, how much more can we do as per capita, right? And then the other communities are like, well, if they're at 100 gallons, we were already at 80. I don't know those numbers, I'm just saying. But it was like, how are we going to, it's going to be tough when we're giving away free toilets. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Every drop counts. So, yeah, I support this wholeheartedly. I just wonder also with the science behind the DNRs, that's part of the thing that I just don't think the judge ever looked at the science behind in her ruling. I disagree with that. What?
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyways, so, I'm just like, I know they've got it, that where that 55 came from. There's been some discussion from that, but I support it nonetheless. Also going to take the plug to go. We use 75 to 90 gallons per day per person. Picture 90 gallons of water sitting in your living room, and that's what each member in your household averages. We can always do better. So there's my, plug for water. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did ask that this resolution be pulled from the consent agenda. The reason for that is the conversation does not emphasize the other very drastic connections to other policy outcomes that are really expensive and really detrimental to our community. So the judge, in my opinion, may have gotten the law right. I'm very unclear that the science is right. And if the science isn't right, I really don't trust the math that is in the opinion. If we don't get the math, we can't have the policy. Here's the issue. An implication of success in the implementation of the ruling as it stands is a standing order that we protect a particular level of the lake. For as long as anybody has lived around here and can remember, that lake has gone up and down and has had wild swings long before we were pumping water at the rates at which we might currently be pumping in the whole metropolitan area. That's just a nature of the hydrology of the region. The implication that we would have to cease usage to protect the level sustained in the court ruling implies things like the city might be forced to directly augment water into the lake via a pipeline from the Mississippi River that would run Mississippi River water directly into the lake in order to maintain a protected level. Or we and other communities would have to cease pumping and convert to surface water, e.g., the Mississippi River moving through the chain of lakes to a new water plant yet to be built. Either one of those is literally tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars that would be a cost incurred by our community. So it's not merely our local press and others, this isn't merely about protecting the lake. It has a whole ton of other dollar signs associated with it. And so I wanted to make sure that we used an opportunity to not only express our support, but our thanks to Senators Housley, Senators Chamberlain, Senator Uyghur, and others that are in support of this, to buy time to do the analysis, to think our way through a really complex set of conversations. So we really need this to pass, and the consequences of it not passing could be really, really expensive. And I just wanted to put an exclamation point on that point.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just add, I'm reading social media, and I know it's maybe not the smartest thing to do, but actually, the good points come out, and so there's an argument made on Nextdoor app, I think I read, that that we meaning the city and other cities, going to the legislature because we lost in court. So we're going around the court, we're going to there because we lost in court, like it's a back-end way to do things. But actually, that's the perfect kind of balance and give and take between the branches of government. I mean, there was a lawsuit over interpretation of a law. The DNR was enforcing this law. Somebody, lake owners, felt that they weren't enforcing it right. They went to court, argued over the law. I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure the judge got the science right, but the judge said, as the law is written, DNR needs to do things differently. It's okay then for the legislature to react to that and say, all right, if we weren't clear enough, court, let us be perfectly clear, and we're going to clarify what we really meant as the legislative body in charge of things like water and lake levels. So that's the point of the legislation, is to add clarity that wasn't there and get the right intent of the legislative body duly elected, and then hopefully influenced by resolutions like this and our legislative agenda. So I don't know that I don't agree with the argument that we're going around the court to the legislature. That's perfectly natural. And if we can convince the legislature to do that, then the court will have a clearer set of laws in front of which they should applaud and say, okay, now it's more black and white. Now DNR, do your job, control the lake levels using the permits that you've been using, whatever the legislature decides. So I'm glad we're doing this. Thanks.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I would move that.
I have a motion. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passes. Moving on to item 9, discussion. We have nothing scheduled. Item 10, communications from the city manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. In your packet is just an update from Ramsey County Smoke-Free Housing Updates from the Association of Minnesota Non-Smokers. Nothing, I guess, to add to that, just a communication in your packet, and I don't have anything other to share tonight. Anything else to share?
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Any questions, comments for Ms. Crawford? Councilmember Jones.
Just want to say publicly, the Friday News Connection, whatever, I can't remember the name. Awesome. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agree. Councilmember Walsh.
I just want to say that after that long discussion of sidewalk maintenance, I thought the city staff reacted very well, and the sidewalks are really looking good this week. I just really want to applaud the work, obviously reaction to our conversation, so your team really did a great job. Sidewalks are really
Full
looking
help
good.
from the weather.
Even the one in
All you guys.
front of my house is perfectly clear.
Really, really hard on that. Thank you.
I almost slipped on a stretch of public sidewalk 4 days ago. It was about 5 feet long and it was shaded. But other than that,
Then you were in St. Paul.
no, I was in White Bear Lake.
Let him know the address. He'll send a crew out there.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. catch inside a tight 45.
Senator Uyghur had his name
Are we moving in the house at all on that bill? We gotta work on the house, I think. On that lake level bill.
full sponsorship of the lake level.
We might have to,
Our house action. What's that?
Is that something we could have conversation about? Is that something we could have conversation about? The lake level issue, period.